Hello, and welcome back. A quick disclaimer here, these are my opinions, and my opinion should be taken with a grain of salt because I am not a doctor. I am just a person who likes to watch TV and movies. People often love to blame Lorelai for the reason that Rory turned out the way that she did, and even though I'm a Lorelai fanatic, I have to say there is some truth to that. As much as I love her, I can admit that her being a young, single mother played a lot into her decision making when it came to Rory. Another part of that is her upbringing. I believe that her intentions were always pure, like as far as her wanting to be a good mom and a good role model, I think that was the goal. I don't think that she intentionally ever tried to cause any negative things to happen with Rory. I do also believe with her being such a young mother that, again, the maturity level is a little bit different when you're raising a child at 16 versus when you're raising a child at 32. She wanted a better relationship with her daughter than what she had with her mother, and I think sometimes that may have overshadowed some better decisions, which is why it's very important to understand the difference between intention versus execution. And this is not even to say that just because you're a young mother, it means you're gonna mess up your kid. It's not even to say that because you're a young mother, your kid is gonna turn out exactly like Rory, which is what brings us to the point of today's discussion, which is what key factors led to Rory becoming who she became in the revival.
Kiera loves TV. Yes, I made a theme song so that I can talk about all my favorite shows. Oh yeah.
And this is just your disclaimer that this is not me talking about any of the actors themselves, but more so their characters. Please do not attack me in the comments. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, even those who disagree with me. But let's keep it friendly. All right, let's get started with the show. Yes, I do believe that Lorelai had good intentions. Welcome to my channel where I believe that two things can definitely be right at the same time. I don't believe in things being completely black and white. One of the main purposes of me creating the Emily Gilmore manipulation videos is to show that your upbringing has a lot of effects on the person you become as an adult. One of my most popular videos is the Why Everybody Hates Rory Gilmore video. I'd like to attribute a lot of that to the fact that even though a large percentage of the fandom does not like Rory, as many people don't like her, a lot of people do. And let's talk about why. A lot of people find Rory relatable. They find her inability to stay to the path at which she started in the beginning of the show very relatable. It's almost in the same way that people find Carrie Bradshaw relatable as well. Some people are able to see themselves in Rory or characters like Rory who seem to not really have a clear plan in life, or they seem to be still finding themselves. And I can admit there is some relatability in that. Another thing that makes the character Rory Gilmore so fascinating for so many people is the way that she changed. I've even found that some people get really angry just at the mention that this character had a complete 180 switch. From what I've gathered, a lot of people are noticing that in season 1, the character Rory Gilmore seems focused, determined, and she seems to have a lot of sympathy for others. And I think for some people, not all, but some people, that is what they hold on to when they say that they like Rory Gilmore. I've already talked about the distinction between Chilton Rory versus Yale Rory. Chilton Rory seemed to have a little bit more of a sense of reality and understanding her place in the world, whereas Yale Rory completely ignores her privilege, and it seems to only get worse once she is in the revival. A lot of people cannot seem to really resonate with the fact that Rory's character did completely change when we entered the revival. In A Year in the Life, it's not just about her being confused, it's the sense of entitlement that she has. Because growing up, Rory was always told that she was the best and that she only deserved the best by people like Lorelai and people like Emily and Richard. She began to believe it. This is the same girl whose grandparents wanted to put her name on a building. She truly began to believe all the hype around her. When everyone around you is telling you how great of a person you are, how influential you are, how much you've done so much and you deserve so much, at what point do you not believe the general opinion? I also believe that Rory faced a lot of gifted child fatigue because of the overwhelming praise from her family and Stars Hollow and everyone around her, even her friends and her boyfriends. Examples of this are clearly shown, like when Richard was outraged at the fact that Rory wanted wanted to be with Dean. The undertone in all of that was that he felt that she was too good for him. And while at the time she did disagree, over time, it seems as though she truly believes that. A lot of people, including myself, believe that the hypocrisy of Rory Gilmore's character and her experiences with her family are a large part of the problem. For example, one of the huge turning points in Rory Gilmore going from what we knew her as into who she becomes in the future is when she drops out of Yale. This was shocking for a lot of people and it felt completely out of character. My issue with it personally is the fact that she drops out because of what Mitchum has to say about her work performance, but she feels entitled to give her own opinion about a ballerina's performance. And when she gives this opinion, Richard and Emily co-sign it. Lorelai does say that she was being a tad harsh. Rory was aware that she had probably hurt the ballerina's feelings and still tried to play the victim. This is a lot of people's issues with Rory. It's that like she doesn't often have moments where she just can be completely wrong and apologize for those moments and then actually grow from it. For example, her sleeping with Dean when he was married. And then later in the revival, it's revealed that she's sleeping with Logan, who's also engaged. She got screamed at in the street by Lindsay's mother, and that still wasn't enough to make her realize that her doing this affects other people. And the affairs that she's had is not all her fault. That's not what I'm trying to suggest here. Both Logan and Dean, for participating in this, were equally wrong. For them both to lead on people that genuinely cared about them or that they'd promised to be with forever and things like that and hurt them in that way, that was wrong. And while some of my opinions that I probably put out in the Why Everybody Hates Rory Gilmore video are not exactly the same, I will say that I still stand on that they wasted so much time with the Rory and Dean affair, all for Rory not even to learn her lesson from the experience. She sleeps with Dean and she blames it on her mother, who, by the way, she had actually had a real conversation with Christopher about what their future looked like. I think if she genuinely thought he was going to go back to Sherry, which is why she was so broken up about it at Suki's wedding, I don't think that she would have slept with him. But nonetheless, in the way that I've said that Emily is very avoidant, so is Rory, so is Lorelai. So is Richard. This is a family that often avoids things before they actually address them. Even with the fact that when Lorelai avoids things, she tries to make it more so in a funny way, she's still avoidant about a lot of things. Not nearly as much as Emily, but still avoidant about a lot of things. So unknowingly, this family has taught Rory that instead of actually addressing your issues, avoid them. There's also an episode where Lorelai points that out, that the Gilmores do not talk about their feelings, they don't address things, they just sweep everything up under the rug. Just like when Rory liked Jess and she kissed him at Suki's wedding, but then returned and then tried to talk about how Shane wasn't even Jess's type and all that kind of stuff, instead of just addressing the fact that she did have feelings for him and she wanted him, instead of just breaking up with Dean and going after who she really wanted. And I understand. To a certain extent, I feel like maybe Rory felt like she was losing her safety net because Dean is portrayed out to be the perfect boyfriend and everyone in Stars Hollow loves him and he just fits in really well. He doesn't fit in really well with the Gilmores because again, they feel like Rory is way too good to be with Dean, but he fits in really well with being a safer option than Jess. It almost reminds me of in The Office. Where Angela and Dwight are having their affair and Dwight just cannot understand why Angela will not leave Andy. And Phyllis tells Dwight that Andy isn't really a risk factor, but Dwight is. Basically trying to explain the idea of one person actually having the potential to hurt a person versus another person being more like a safe option because you know that you're not going to be that hurt if they leave you, or that they might not leave you at all. Think of this analogy. Okay, everyone has a favorite show. If you're watching this video, it's probably Gilmore Girls. Gilmore Girls is now available on Netflix, but imagine if one day just like all the other shows that have been taken off Netflix. Imagine if one day they tell you that Gilmore Girls is only going to be on Netflix for 3 more days and then it's gone, with no hope of it being on a new platform. What is the first thing that you are going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to go to Netflix. You're going to try to watch this show. I mean, literally, think about when all the other shows that you probably liked were taken off of a platform. You tried to go watch it because you don't know when you're going to see it again. I think I briefly talked about this in my Why Everybody Hates Rory Gilmore video, but Rory has always had a cushion. Her grandparents have always been the cushion. Stars Hollow people have always been the cushion, the people in the background rooting for her, saying, you can do it, and don't worry, and do what you need to do when you need to do it, and things like that. I think at some point Rory reached burnout. A lot of times overachievers reach burnout, which is basically where you overwork yourself to the point where you have no energy left to give. In season 1, almost entering season 2, Rory still has that Stars Hollow, Chilton Rory, babyface Rory thing in her. Over time, reality hit. It becomes very clear to her that there's 2 sides of the world. There's the side where people have an advantage and there's the side where people do not. And as much as she tried to cling to being the Stars Hollow Rory, over time, she lost that because she was able to see that with just a little bit of money, with just a little bit of privilege, the world looks a lot different. And Lorelai often tries to explain that these 2 worlds are very different, which is why she left. I have watched Gilmore Girls more times than probably anybody should, and each time that I watch the show all the way through over and over again, I just keep wondering, like, how did Rory get to the point that she did in the revival? What happened? People have so many questions. What happened to the trust fund? How was she completely broke? And the best way that I can make sense of this is that Rory has always had a cushion. People do not understand just how similar Rory and Jess actually are, and I did kind of go into that a little bit in my video talking about the downfall of Rory and Jess. But these 2 characters are very, very similar, except you have 2 cases here. You have one case where you have a guy who hasn't grown up with a lot of fortune, doesn't really grow up with anyone influencing him to finish school until Luke, and grows up from being the town bad boy and turns into someone with values and morals. How did that happen? Because you have one person who has a strong support system versus another person who ends up realizing my support system is not as big as this other person's, and I have no choice but to get myself together. I've struggled a lot with trying to understand how her having that big of a support system negatively impacted her. Language of characters like Paris. I think I've said this before. When you listen to the language of characters like Paris and Logan and Emily and Richard, you can hear the lifestyle that they live in comparison to the lifestyle of those like people from Stars Hollow or people from societies where that doesn't exist. Societies where money is not as easily accessible. For people in Stars Hollow, money means opportunities. For people who are like Emily, for people who come from Emily's world, money means control. money means power. And it's only when you have been in both worlds that you truly understand the truth in that. This is a classic case of dysfunction breeding dysfunction. You have characters like Richard, who unknowingly teaches Rory that lying is okay when he's lying to Emily about seeing Penelon Lot for all those years. The undertone there is lie so that you don't hurt people, hide yourself, lie so that you can do whatever it is that you want to do. Characters like Lorelai, who also taught Rory to lie by telling her not to tell Dean something in order to keep the peace. It's almost like everyone is so wrapped up in their own personal lives and being their own people that they don't even realize. I really honestly don't think that anybody realizes just how much they might be teaching Rory to be the person that she turned out to be. And that can be the danger of not going to therapy, of not healing your traumas and things like that. I'm not going to sit up here and pretend like Rory can't make her own decisions or like Rory doesn't have free will. But if all your influences around you are toxic to a certain extent, it only makes sense that that's what you would gravitate towards. Someone once asked me in my comment section if I believe that Lorelai made the right decision by getting that loan from Richard and Emily so that Rory could go to Chilton, and I don't. I see why she made the choice to do that. I understand it. I understand that she wanted the best for her kid and she felt like she was going to be disappointing her, and she probably felt like she already could not give her the best life in the world in comparison to how she grew up. But honestly and truly, I really think that her downfall, what started off this whole trajectory, like I think her being influenced by Emily and Richard and also witnessing her mother dealing with Emily and Richard were huge factors in why she turned out to be the way that she was in the revival. So two things can definitely be true at the same time. Do I believe that there were good intentions in what was done? Yes. Do I also believe that Rory runs away from taking accountability and that's the reason why like a large percentage of the fan base does not like her? Yes. Do I believe that she's privileged and just refuses to acknowledge it? Yes. I also think like the way that Rory stayed the way that she was for 16 years and didn't become who she became in the revival or as entitled as she was towards the end of the show is because she lacked Emily and Richard's influence, because Lorelai kept them away. Like these are the same people that had her literally picking out things that she wanted to keep after they die before they even died. But as much as people hated the revival, in my honest opinion, I feel like it's not all completely bad, only because of how they ended it with Rory and her still not acknowledging her privilege and things like that. There's still room for them to come back in and do more. Like they left the door open for her to be conflicted. Like I get also why they did that. It's because they had to. They had to bring her back in as a girl with all these different issues and problems, because what show would it really have been if Rory was back to being like what most people did not like her as a Mary Sue, which is basically like a girl with nothing that can like come against her, like nothing that can challenge the character. And a lot of people hated that. A lot of people felt like she needed curveballs thrown at her that were more obvious. If I was in the writer's room, which how would I ever be? But if I was in the writer's room, I would remember, you have every single right to disagree with me. I'm not asking anybody to kiss my butt and agree with every single thing that I said. So now I want to know exactly what you think. If you were to rewrite the revival or start it off from where it ended, what would you write? I love when you guys comment like these really abstract comments and ideas, and I love reading them. So definitely comment down below, what would you do? What do you think about some of the things I've said? Are you able to look at Rory through a different light? Does this open up a little bit more perspective? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Can't wait to hear what you think, and I'll see you guys in the next one.